Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another video. It is Friday. I hope you all are doing well. We have had some more distracting news over the course of the last 24 to 48 hours. We sat down a couple of days ago and spoke about the report suggesting that fellow Premier League clubs have complained to the Premier League surrounding Everton's financial situation, and we're hoping for some form of punishment to the ongoing investigation to be applied to Everton before the end of the current season. We heard similar reports to this last season, of course, when it was reported that Leeds and Burnley were both complaining to the Premier League about Everton trying to find some form of, reasoning to either give Everton some form of points deduction or whatever the, punishment would be that would, significantly hinder Everton's chances of staying in the Premier League. Obviously, that didn't come to fruition. Everton managed to stay in the Premier League last season. Now, a year later, we are reading similar reports. But we talked about that on Tuesday, I believe it was. We sort of, put that to one side and spoke about how laughable and embarrassing it is from the journalist who published the story on the weekend, the same journalist who published the story last year, and also, on behalf of those Premier League clubs that are not taking accountability and responsibility for their failures and instead trying to, for some reason, try and force the Premier League to punish Everton. But, as I said, we've spoken about that one. We have had another bit of what I say distracting news, and by distracting news, I say that because it's news that is quite significant around the football club and news that certainly got the conversation starting on social media on Wednesday when it was put out there, and that is that, according to Mike Keegan of the Daily Mail, he reported around about, Wednesday night, really, 11 p.m. in the night, so not particularly early in the day, and Mike Keegan reported that Everton are close to being sold in a deal worth around 600 million, with 777 Partners being the preferred bidder. A deal is expected to be concluded by the start of next week. Mike Keegan then went on to report that sources insist 777 Partners are demanding a Premier League guarantee in order to conclude their sale. Everton want the deal done at a high speed. He also reported that MSP Sports Capital remained in the chase last night and appeared undeterred to be clear second favourites. Other possible candidates are circling but are running out of time, and I believe that original Mike Keegan article reported that 777 would be coming in and buying Farhad Mashiri's stake in the football club, meaning of course Farhad Mashiri would no longer be the owner of Everton. Is it 94.6 or 96.4, whatever it is, percent is what 777 Partners are looking to buy from the majority shareholder. This obviously sparked a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion surrounding, the potential takeover. We've had a lot of talk about Everton, being taken over in the last sort of 6 months or so, and some of it has been sort of, more focused on an actual takeover, and it seems like 777 Partners are more interested in an actual full takeover of the football club. Some of the talk has been focused more on investment into the football club. I think MSP Sports Capital are certainly looking particularly for an investment situation as opposed to a full complete takeover. That would of course mean that Farhad Mashiri would remain at the football club. Alan Myers Thursday morning reported that Farhad Mashiri remains in talk with a number of companies looking to invest in Everton. 777 Partners and MSP Capital are the most advanced groups discussing proposals. MSP remain the more likely option currently, so that of course is contradicting the report from the Mail the night before. Alan Myers also said 777 Partners wish to buy a majority stake in Everton, while MSP Sports Capital wants a smaller percentage investment. No decision has been made yet and is not expected to come until the season is finished, possibly in mid-June. And then BBC reported yesterday a deal to sell Everton is not imminent and any deal is highly unlikely to happen before the end of the season. So that is where we are currently with the situation. as we've just mentioned, the report suggesting that a deal is close, maybe a little bit premature. Fraser Fletcher, of course, who is a journalist for Football Insider, he has just reported an hour ago that Everton still in talks over investment, but suggestions a 777 takeover is imminent are understood to be premature. So, yeah, again, it seems like we may have had a journalist jump the gun on this, and not for the first time either. We heard a couple of months ago that MSP Capital were pretty much done and dusted in completing their investment into Everton Football Club, and then a day or so later we read that was a little bit of a premature conclusion to the situation, and the fact of the matter is MSP was still in talks, but there was nowhere near a completed deal or anything of the sort that was being suggested. It seems very much like this situation is where it was a week ago, before either of these articles or either of these reports had been, thrown out there. As I said, the Daily Mail report on Wednesday night sort of suggested that this was a lot further along than what we originally thought, and they suggested that Everton are close to being sold. It would be around £600 million. It would be a full sale. It was 777 partners that were the bidder of that amount of money, and a deal is expected to be concluded by the start of next week. Now, considering we're on Friday today, that would obviously mean that there's only a matter of days before this deal is set to have been completed, and it doesn't look like that is the case whatsoever. I think there would have been a lot more journalists and a lot more news reporters sort of reporting on this if it was as down the line as that. Again, I don't speak to Farhad Moshiri, and I don't speak to those at the football club, and I wouldn't know how far along this situation is other than, reading what we've all read. But it seems like that was a pretty premature, jump of the gun by the Daily Mail. And as I said, as Alan Myers has said, who is, has been close to the club for a number of years, that it isn't quite as far down the line as being suggested. However, Farhad Moshiri does remain in talks with a number of companies looking to invest in Everton. And I suppose what you've got here is you've got two types of options for Farhad Moshiri. You've got 777, who are appearing to, want to buy his entire stake of the football club. So he would, make however much money selling his stake in the football club. Reports of £600 million. Again, whether or not they are true, we will wait and see. Some people will say, well, why wouldn't they be? Well, the same article suggested that the deal will be done by next week, and that's seems like it isn't going to happen. So whether or not that £600 million price tag is accurate, we will wait and see. But it appears like we have 777 who are wanting a full takeover, wanting to purchase, Farhad Moshiri's majority stake in the football club, which of course would mean him leaving the football club, and ultimately I would assume would lead to massive changes at boardroom and changes wholesale changes around the football club. Or you've got MSP Sport Capital, who, as previously reported, are looking more to invest in the club rather than completely take over, which would likely mean that Farhad Moshiri would remain at the football club. Whether or not his percentage would drop, I would assume so, if MSP were coming in to invest and to buy some form of stake in the club, but it would probably still leave him as the majority shareholder, so ultimately still leave him as the decision maker. However, reports previously suggesting that MSP were looking to purchase a stake large enough to, have them have a member of their company on Everton's board, which again would still likely see board changes at the current level. So, yeah, again, I called this distracting news at the start of the video, and I think it's really important to sort of, we can talk about it, and we can entertain the conversation, and we can certainly, read up on reports suggesting that deals may be close or deals mightn't be close, and who's in the in the front seat, etc., etc. But similarly to the the situation regarding Everton's finances, which is an incredibly worrying one, and one that I'm sure we will sort of talk a lot more about and dig a lot deeper into in the summer once this Premier League season is concluded. I'm not particularly interested in any takeover talk at the moment. I'll be brutally honest with you, I'm not. And the reason for that is because Everton have got 2 cup finals coming up, in the next 2 weeks. We've got a humongous game of football against Wolverhampton Wanderers, or tomorrow afternoon. We will be doing the live game preview to that a little bit later on today, so don't forget to look out for that one. But that game is absolutely massive. Again, I would label it as a cup final. We've gone from labelling games as must-wins to now labelling games as a cup final. I don't really care how cringy that sounds or how, you're making us look stupid, etc., etc. I'm not asked. It is a cup final tomorrow. And then we've got another cup final against Bournemouth, a week later. Leeds and Leicester, of course, have got some difficult games coming up. But we simply aren't in a position as a football club, pardon me, at the moment to be being distracted by potential talks of a takeover. A takeover for me is necessary. I've said before and I'll say it again, the position of the board at this football club is completely untenable, and wholesale changes need to be made regardless of what the outcome of this season is, whether or not we go down or whether or not we stay up. There still needs to be wholesale changes at the top of this football club. People like Denise Barrett-Baxendale, people like Bill Kenwright simply cannot continue in their roles. It's done now. Their position is, as I've just said, completely untenable. I myself am also a firm believer that Farhad Moshiri's time at the football club is done. We talk about Bill Kenwright and Denise not being able to repair those relationships between themselves and fans, but there is still, I believe, a small percentage of Evertonians that believe Farhad Moshiri can repair his relationship with Evertonians, and maybe he can. Listen, you should never say never, and football is a mad sport, and if Farhad Moshiri, brings investments into the football club and all of a sudden moves on a few members of the current board, brings in a couple of people that know what they're doing, know how to run a business, know how to run a football club, then I'm sure, in due course, if Everton become a success and things start to get better and, things start to improve and we start running the football club properly, then fans probably will, begin to rebuild that relationship with Farhad Moshiri. But for me, personally, I think it's done for Farhad Moshiri as well. So if you were asking what I would rather, an investment into the club or a complete takeover, personally, I would rather a complete takeover. However, there's two different situations here at hand, isn't there? Because, I am fully appreciative that it could not have gone much worse for Farhad Moshiri during his time at Everton Football Club. And I know people will say, well, he pumped money into the club and he's this and he's that, he's done the other. Great. And I know the stadium is ultimately what will be his legacy. And, if you'd have said to some Evertonians before Farhad Moshiri come in, you're going to get a majority shareholder, he's going to come in, you're not going to win anything. You haven't won anything for 10 years, 15 years prior. You're not going to win anything, but you're going to end up with a new stadium. Maybe some Evertonians will have gone, do you know what? We'll take that. But the reality is for the most part, certainly on the pitch, his time at Everton Football Club has been a massive failure. However, that does not guarantee that whoever would to come in to replace him would be a success. And if you were to say to me, right, Cam, 777, buy out the club, buy out Farhad Moshiri, but ultimately they're not very good either. They don't really know what they're doing and things don't really get much better. Or MSP come in, they only invest in the club, Farhad Moshiri remains, but they put some real football people in charge at board level and they make some real smart decisions and they actually know what they're doing. Then obviously I would prefer the latter. However, there's no guarantee that either of those would happen. There's no guarantee that MSP would come in and do a great job, and there's no guarantee that 777 would come in and do a poor job. I'll be honest, I don't know much about 777. I don't. I know that they've got involvement in a number of other football clubs across Europe. Some of that involvement is, merely a small percentage where they have very limited control on what goes on at said football club. Some of that involvement is a massive percentage and a full ownership of that football club. And I've seen some people say, oh, stay away from 777, they own X, Y and Z, and X is in a relegation battle, Y is having their worst season in years, and Z is again gone down or whatever. And I've seen other people say actually X, Y and Z are fighting for Europe for the first time in years, or brought them back up after a really poor season the season prior. The reality of the situation is, and my point is you will always get differences in opinions. Our 777 partners absolutely 100% guaranteed to come into Everton Football Club and do what we need them to do? No, they're not. And they have had previous with football clubs where they maybe haven't done as well as they would, have wanted to. But that doesn't mean that it won't work out. And that doesn't mean that it will work out. That is the risk when you sell a football club. That is the risk. Ultimately, the risk when we brought Farhad Bashiri in was that it wouldn't work out. But none of us really entertained that risk at the time because we were all just dead happy and made up that we were bringing in a multi-billionaire and we could actually finally spend some money. So we didn't really entertain the thought of spending hundreds of millions of pounds and being in a relegation battle with financial struggles, did we? Because we all just thought, well, yeah, that could happen, but think of what could happen positively as well. So yes, there is a world in which things don't get much better for Everton, even if we're taking over, but you have to look positively at this. And for me, it's a very, 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 very simple answer to the equation, and that answer is for me that Farhad Moshiri's time at Everton Football Club is done, in my opinion, and certainly Farhad Moshiri's time at being a decision maker at Everton Football Club is done. As I said, if Farhad is to remain, which is a very big possibility because he owns the football club and ultimately, whether he wants to stay or go will be his decision. He will either pick 777 to come in and completely take over and release him of his, duties, or he will pick MSP to come in and give him a little bit of a hand. Reality is that there's risk behind both of those things. Of course there is. There's massive risks behind both of those things. One thing we absolutely need to see at the end of this season, as I've just said, regardless of Everton staying in the Premier League or not staying in the Premier League, is wholesale change. There's no way Bill Kenwright can continue his role at the end of this season, whether Everton are playing, Sunderland next season in the Championship or whether Everton are playing Manchester United in the Premier League. There's no way Bill Kenwright can remain. There's no way Denise Barrett-Baxendale can remain. Both of those people are, for me, at a stage now where their time at this football club is done. Now, as I said, I preferably would prefer Farhad Moshiri to move on as well, but that mightn't be the case, and the reality is we have to accept that. I think, regardless of whether it be MSP or 777, I still think there'll be wholesale changes at board level, and by that I think what I mean is that the people I've just mentioned I think will be moved on. But one thing is for sure is this will not be concluded before the end of the season, in the same way as that the financial fair play investigation will not be concluded until the end of the season. So we simply at the moment have to effectively ignore this. And I know we all got a bit excited and there was a little bit of hype because the report suggested that it could be completed by next week, but they were shut down pretty quickly and suggested that they were premature. Yes, 777 might be ahead of MSP at this point because Farhad Moshiri might have woken up on Wednesday and thought, actually, do you know what? I want a full sale. I want to get out of here. But we know Farhad Moshiri. We know Farhad Moshiri more than anyone. He could wake up on a Wednesday and think, I want to get out of here. I don't want any part of this football club. And he might wake up on the Thursday and think, actually, do you know what? I do want to be part of it. So the reality is there was some reports earlier on in the week suggesting that this is maybe further along the line than it actually is. Those reports were, not shut down in a case of them being false, but more so altered to, suggest that they are a little bit premature than the situation actually tells. That Daily Mail report pretty much suggested that this was done and dusted. It was a £600 million takeover. It was 777 partners, and it was pretty much about, crossing the T's and dotting the I's, or whatever that saying is. I don't really think that's to be the case. However, I do think that both of those parties, 777 and MSP, are probably deeply in conversation with Farhad Moshiri, and I do think a conclusion to this situation will come soon, but I don't think it'll be before the end of the season, and we simply as fans have to put this behind us, forget about it completely. The club has to forget about it, the players, even though I don't think the players will be focused on it anyway, but we all have to forget about it and just focus purely on the next two games, which are two massive games of football. If you're asking my opinion on it, as I said, there's risk behind both of these because nothing is guaranteed in football, and the saying is, is the grass always greener, etc, etc. Sometimes in football and in life you have to take a risk, and what is absolutely abundantly clear, whilst it might be uncertain that Everton will get better with 777 partners, and whilst it's uncertain that Everton will get better if MSP come in, what's absolutely uncertain is Everton will get better. What's absolutely what's absolutely evident is Everton will not get better under Farhad Moshiri, Bill Kenwright, Denise Barrett-Baxendale, and the people currently at the football club. So yes, it's a risk, and yes, it's a risk we're going to have to take, because the reality is change is needed, and hopefully it's for the best. We'll wait and see if that is the case, but it cannot keep going in this way. So we have to take that risk. It's as simple as that. We have to make that jump. But that is, as I said, something to discuss following the conclusion of this Premier League season. We need to focus all of our energy on the last 2 games. There you go. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Do you agree? Would you rather 777 come in and completely buy the football club, or would you rather MSP come in and buy just the stake instead? Let us know your thoughts. If you have enjoyed this one, please do leave a like. As I said, we'll be back with the game preview to the Wolves game a little bit later on, so don't forget to join us for that one. Big thank you all for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you are new, and we'll see you later.